Hey guys, so as you saw from the title of this video, I am here today to talk about Jenluvsreviews. I apologize for the lighting, but I'm sitting at my desk because I have literally 27 pages of notes and screenshots, so I need to be at my desk to refer to my computer. I'm sitting in front of my window, so like lighting shouldn't be too bad, but it's not about the lighting here today. It's about facts, not feelings. If you've been following along with Jen on Twitter recently, you'll know what I'm talking about. Basically, I wanted to talk about Jenluvsreviews and this Ofra situation, but really the more I started digging into Jen, the more I realized that this is a pattern of behavior with her, and I think we need to talk about it. I think that it needs to be exposed and we need to fully lay out all of her crimes. That's a cat ear. I think we fully need to lay out all of her indiscretions and talk about it, because I don't think it's a one-off anymore. I think this is a clear pattern of behavior, and Jen has basically shown that she hasn't learned from any of this behavior, and so we're going to discuss that today. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel every Tuesday and Thursday, and you should stick around. I apologize if the video is long, but I got a lot to talk about. So let's go back to the beginning. So many years ago, Jen wasn't reviewing like brands like Jeffree Star Cosmetics. Like a lot of other YouTubers stopped supporting him after the Aina incident. And then in 2018, she put out a video called Beauty Brands That Are Canceled, and whether or not she would support them. And in that video, she talked about brands like Unique, Jeffree Star Cosmetics, Anastasia Beverly Hills, some other brands like Urban Decay she talked about for like supporting drug use, which like I don't think that they did that, but okay. So she lumped them all together and basically in the video said that people were calling her a hypocrite because she was supporting brands like Laura Lee and not Jeffree when they were both accused of racism. I would argue that their racism is much different, but I'm not black, so that's not my place. However, so basically the video was her saying, I'm no longer going to not support brands that have racist past. I'm just going to review all the brands I want, and that's that. And she was like, I reserve the right to like mouth off when I want, but I'm just going to keep, I'm going to review every brand because I don't want to be a hypocrite. Now, my personal perspective on this is that, cattail. My personal perspective on this is that it's not about, you know, because she was like, it's just makeup and I want to be able to review the makeup. But for me, it's not about the makeup. It's about, you know, a general consumer supporting Jeffree Star is one thing. But when you support them on a channel like Jen's that has, I believe, 1 million subscribers. I mean, the beauty of being at my computer is I can look. Okay, so she only has 300,000 subscribers, but like still a lot of subscribers. So when you support Jeffree or review Jeffree on a brand like on a scale like that, you're not just reviewing makeup, you're giving a platform to someone who preaches hate. Someone replied to one of her tweets about this, and she said, in my opinion, a makeup review is not the place to push an agenda. It's the place where I educate, not shove my thoughts down someone's throat. I love, I think she's tagging Lovette here, who I will talk about in a second, and everything she stands for. I'm doing better by educating, not pushing. And then someone, Emily, replied saying, I don't see how giving people all the info is pushing an agenda, but okay. You're missing my point, and that's where I'm going to leave this disappointing conversation, I guess. Have a good night. And Jen said, sigh, ... I think you missed the point of my entire video. At least we tried to communicate. Have a good night. But like, educating people about the fact that these brands are hateful is not pushing an agenda. I understand it's difficult to reach people who are, you know, who support Jeffree Star. It's not easy to make them not support him, but I think that, you know, he has favorably fallen off, and that is not because people haven't talked about it. That's because people like me and other influencers and other tea channels have been talking about Jeffree's problematic behavior for years until it eventually became more widespread. Like, not talking about something isn't going to fix any problems, and I really hate the statement of pushing an agenda, because like, I don't think standing against racism is pushing an agenda, but like, that's just me. Lovette is another YouTuber, I believe, and she shared an interesting discussion with Jen she had on Twitter. And I just wanted to show this one tweet I saw from Jen earlier, because Jen had shared Lovette's video about how to be a good ally, which I will link down below. And Lovette retweeted this post that said, if you're white, you don't get to decide what a POC finds racist. If you're cis, you don't get to decide what's transphobic. If you're straight, you don't get to decide what's homophobic. You can't decide what's harmful to a community you have no claim to, period. And she replied, she retweeted and said, period. And Jen's reply, this is like kind of not included in this drama, but Jen's reply was very interesting to me. She replied, again, this was in 2018, I'd love to get your opinion. How can a white cis person show support for people facing prejudice and racism? I feel that sometimes you aren't allowed makes people afraid to stand up for fear of saying the wrong thing. I have my opinion, but I'd love to know yours. And like, it's just so interesting that from that tweet, Jen took that she's not allowed to speak on issues when the tweet was saying she's not allowed to decide that something is racist just because she thinks it's racist and she's white. And the tweet is about people saying like, oh, that's not racist and that's not transphobic and that's not this. It's about white people and cis people who speak over Black people, people of color, marginalized groups, and tell them what's not racist is what the tweet is about. And Jen took it as an attack on her, being like, I'm afraid to stand up because, you know, saying you're not allowed makes people feel afraid to stand up. But if you believe in something and you believe you're standing up for a marginalized group, like it just was weird that that's what Jen took from that. And I think it's just like a window into how she sees issues like this. Lovette revealed on Twitter that Jen had reached out to her after her Brands That Are Canceled video. So Lovette and Jen, I believe, had some interaction before. Lovette said that Jen had shared her How to Be an Ally video. She said, Jen had previously shared my TED Talk and video on how to be an ally, a huge joke because she learned nothing. And these are the screenshots of their DMs. So keep in mind, Lovette did not reach out to Jen or I think even comment on her video, but Jen reached out to Lovette in DMs and said, hey hon, I'm not sure if you saw today's video or not, but I want to make sure you know that I haven't changed my position on standing up for what's right. Like, if you have to reach out to a person of color who you're friends with and tell them that, like, why would they think that? Just wondering. Like I mentioned in the video, I reserve the right to mouth off whenever I deem necessary, and I will be mouthing off when necessary. I just want to make sure you know that. I respect you a lot, and I don't want you to think I'm giving up because I'm not. And so Lovette said, I did watch it. I rewatched it 3 times with my mom on the phone just to get a second opinion. Then she said, since I found you on YouTube, I've been an avid lover of your channel and think thoroughly that you do a good job and work hard, but you also know my stance on brands that openly and repeatedly problematic, racist, anti-Semitic, anti-ethical views that come up over and over again. What I hear in this video after watching it 3 times is I don't want to take a stance on brands that exclude already marginalized groups because I want the views of people who still support continued marginalizing of groups that truly don't deserve it. And like, honestly, facts. Like, that is exactly what I also heard from the video. It really felt like, well, I'm still gonna review these brands because Jeffree Star reviews get views, and I don't want to not get views from people who support hate. Lovette went on to say, in effect, that also says to me, hey, I'll choose to be an ally as long as it doesn't affect me economically and personally. And as I said in my TED Talk, if people continually support within the beauty industry brands that exclude and marginalize, then you are upholding structures that harm others. And like, honestly, Lovette makes a valid point. I personally don't support Jeffree Star in my personal life, and I wouldn't platform him on my platform either. And like I said, I think there's a difference between the general public supporting someone and a YouTuber supporting someone because you're platforming them. But I also think that, you know, as white people, we need to realize that we are putting money in the pockets of awful people, and that's why I don't support Jeffree Star. So then Jen replied, first, hearing that you think I'm doing this for views is incredibly painful. Like, I'm glad you're in pain, Jen. If you knew all of the things I've turned down, how much money I've turned down because I won't compromise my ethics, you wouldn't say that. So that really stings. Really, your whole comment hurts because you've made judgments about my motives. How about asking me about why I'm doing this instead of telling me why I'm doing this? Jen, she didn't assume this based on nothing. She watched a video where you explained why you were doing something, and then she said, this makes me feel like X, Y, and Z, and Jen immediately jumps to the defense, which you will see as a pattern here. She jumps to the defense and makes it all about herself instead of thinking about how her actions are hurting other groups. Then she says, when people are ignorant, you can't force feed the truth to them. When people show up to your TED Talk or one of your presentations, they do so by choice. They do it because they want to hear what you have to say and they want to learn. People don't come to watch a makeup video to hear about my thoughts on oppression and marginalized groups. If I force feed my beliefs, they are going to turn the other way and it's going to have an opposite effect. Here's the thing. I can see where she's coming from in like, you can't really force feed your views to a group. Like if they already support Jeffree and think that he's not racist, they're not going to believe you when you say that. But there are so many people out there who are uneducated about Jeffree's past or other brands' pasts. And I think like I said, the more people speak about it, the more people will know about it. And also, why do you want those people to come to your channel? If you're not, like she talks about how like, oh, I can't force feed them my views, but like, it's your channel, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Unless you're concerned about not getting those views, which is kind of what it sounds like here. She said, if I don't review controversial brands, who do you think these people are going to watch? Which again, sounds like you care about views, Jen. Well, if they're not gonna watch, they're gonna watch reviews anyways, they might as well watch my reviews. The people who think Jeffree Star is an angel who should be forgiven, even though he continues to disrespect POC as recently as this past weekend. But like, if you think that of him, why would you want to platform him on your channel? Again, if it's not for the views. If I review a product, I can say I'm going to review this product, but if you want to know my personal opinion on who he is, please read the description down below, or alternatively, skip to the timestamp so you can hear my point of view. Which like, sure, but you're still giving him a platform and you're still going to be like, yeah, this eyeshadow palette is great, so you should buy it. But also he's racist. I realize now that I shouldn't have taken your message to heart because in the end, you don't know me. You don't know my heart, and the fact that you would assume so much is extremely disappointing. I still have a ridiculous amount of respect for you and what you were doing. I think you're a fabulous person. I'm just disappointed. Like, again, Jen goes into, it's all about me, it's all about my hurt and not what her actions are doing to other communities. And also, again, she reached out to this woman of color who she sees as a friend and someone she respects and someone who she shared a video about allyship from and asked for her opinion. And then when she didn't get a pat on the head and told that everything was okay, she snapped and became defensive and then said, you don't know me. You don't know me, so it's fine. I actually don't want your opinion because you don't know me, but you asked for it. And that's basically what Lovette says. She said, I didn't initiate this conversation. You asked my opinion, I gave it. So take my opinion to heart, as an attack is slightly disappointing, but not surprising. And then in Lovette's tweets, she goes on to say, I stand by everything I wrote when she asked my opinion. She is a fair weather ally, which I think is chef's kiss, perfect response, who is only an ally when it suits her needs and white savior behavior. When she is corrected or questioned, especially by Black women, she gets mad and cries white tears to make us her mammy. And when that doesn't work, she paints us out to be unempathetic, unreasonable beings who are aggressive and angry. Seems to be that way the way her privilege jumps out. Glad I said my piece. And like, this is just the beginning of Jen's pattern of silencing the voices of Black women, not listening when people tell her she's in the wrong, being defensive and thinking only of herself. And then what's even the most bizarre about this is that like in 2020 that she then did a video called 7 brands I won't purchase from, and in that video she said she won't purchase from Jeffree Star because she thinks he's a trash person. And to me, what that speaks to is the fact that Jeffree Star fell off. People stopped caring about him. He became an unfavorable person in the public perception. So now his videos don't get views anymore, so she doesn't want to support him. But back when she thought he was a trash person 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and didn't want to support him, but she wanted the views from his channel because he was still technically favorable, she was willing to cast aside the fact that he is awful to people of color and women for the views. Like, I don't think Lovette is off at all. Her comments are on point about what is wrong with this situation and Jen's situation. But you know, this is 2018. Maybe things will change. So then we go to 2019. We're in November of 2019. So from here forward, we're pretty close to right now. Everything else that's going to happen is from November of 2019 and into 2020 and into 2021. So in the past 2.5 years, there have been 4 instances. So in 2019, Kevin James Bennett, who, if you don't know, is a makeup artist on YouTube who has always had a problem, or makeup artist on Twitter who has always had a problem with influencers and YouTubers and always sticks his nose in everyone's business, said he posted a tweet from one of the T channels that said, "Oh God, who woke the Crypt Keeper?" And I laughed, I'm not gonna lie. He's calling this ageism, which I'll get to in a second, but I think it was more so, about, you know, when you call someone like, I think he was calling him crypto keywords and like he's out of touch, like he's old school and he doesn't know what's going on anymore kind of vibes. But he said, interesting how some folks on social media are quick to label people they disagree with as racist, sexist bullies, yet they have no problem age shaming. You folks realize ageism is bullying, right? If you don't know, now you do. You're welcome. Have a great day. A lot to dissect here. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet because this video is about Jen, but first of all, I don't like that he said people they label people they disagree with as racist, sexist, when like it's not that we disagree with them, it's that they're being racist and sexist. By saying you just label them that because you disagree with them is undermining their actions of racism. But let's move on. And keep in mind, he doubled down on this when someone said, yes, it's wrong, but I would not put it on par with racism, saying ageism and racism are not the same thing. And he said, I respectfully disagree. Discrimination is discrimination, and there is no better or worse type of a discrimination. Don't do it at all. And like, this is not the oppression Olympics, but if it was, ageism would not fucking get a medal. Like, it is not on par with racism, and that's how this whole conversation starts. Because Jackie Aina replied and said, I know this man did not just compare racism to ageism. And that's where Jen had to stick her nose in and get a word in and defend her friend for no reason about something that didn't include her at all. So she said, I don't think that's what he's saying at all. I believe he's saying that judging someone based on one aspect of who they are is wrong, and that he feels ageism isn't called out as often as other things. I don't think it was about which is more offensive or damaging. So Jackie replies, this isn't the first time I've seen Kevin tiptoe on being a little insensitive in regards to conversations about race. Given the context of that, his comment is inappropriate, which, like, facts. I don't really care about what he meant. It's a false equivalence and it's wrong. I get age shamed too, and I'm only 32, but the two just don't compare. Not even close. I wish people would stop using racism as a light throwaway word that somehow compares to being bullied about age. I experience both. It does not. And she's not wrong. Jen said, I imagine it is definitely a very different experience. Very different? You mean like one is where you fear for your life and like one isn't? One is where like you are literally held down in society for many factors and like one isn't? Is that how you think it's very different? Can we agree that bullying of anyone based on who they are and things they cannot help is wrong? I think that's what was meant to be the heart of this, not a comparison of severity, but a recognition of wrong. And like, you can say something's wrong without comparing it to something else, and that's the issue here is like, no one is gonna say like, ageism is great. What they're gonna say is ageism is wrong, the end. But you can say ageism is wrong without having to bring in racism to make your point, because it just makes you look stupid. So then she replied to another tweet and said, think about how many brands have models over 40. How often youth is celebrated and being older is looked down upon. It's normal in our culture. It doesn't mean it's worse in any way, because that's not true at all. He's bringing attention to a problem that we don't often address, but he's also comparing it and creating a false equivalence like Jackie said. And then someone replied and said, Jen, I love you, but how many times do Black women have to explain things to us before we listen? Fellow white girl, I appreciate you. Lobotomy Groupon, I appreciate you. And Jen said, I'm listening, I'm having a conversation. But like, here's the thing, when it comes to talking about racism, you don't need to have a conversation, because you're not trying to understand what Jackie's saying, you're trying to prove your own point. You're trying to make her agree that your point is right, when it's not about that. You don't get to have an opinion about whether or not it's racist when Jackie already told you it's fucked up that he said that. Like, you should just, if you were actually listening, you would be like, you know what, Jackie, you're right. The end. And then someone said, you realize not having models over 40 and someone being afraid of losing their life because their skin color are not on the same level at all, right? And that KGB doubled down on everything he said. Danny, facts. So then she went on to tweet, I believe that was the next day, she tweeted, not everything needs to be a competition, but like, here's the thing. Black people didn't make it a competition. You and Kevin made it a competition and then doubled down on that competition and then wouldn't just say, you know what, you're right to these people and shut the fuck up. A person saying they have a problem doesn't negate your problem. A person saying they were hurt doesn't negate your pain. Compassion is important. As a society, we are losing it more and more every day. We are losing our human connection with each other. We are losing our compassion. Our leaders are celebrating the loss. Internet groups are celebrating the loss. People bond together over their shared hatred instead of their shared joys. As individuals, we have to choose to care. Once again, she's out here crying her white girl tears for no reason. Like, then she said, we're on a path of continued divisiveness, and we are supporting that divisiveness through our lack of compassion. And I fucking hate middle ground politics that are talking about divisiveness and how you have to come together. Like, Black people don't have to come together with you when you're trying to undermine their own story and their own journey. Like, that's not on them, that's on you. You need to come this way, they don't need to go that way. So from here, someone retweeted the original tweet and said, I agree with this, but not when it comes to racism. So I'm so tired of people comparing it to other things that are just not the same. And Jen replied with, it's not the same. That's exactly what I'm saying. They can't be compared. Racism is something I will never truly understand. That doesn't mean that I can't have an experience where I am treated differently for another reason. They are very different, but I have a right to hurt. And like, Jen, why is everything about you? No one is telling you ageism isn't real and you don't have a right to hurt, but they're saying, don't bring racism into this. So a lot of people, when they think about the situation, they remember her and Jackie going back and forth, but there's actually a lot more that comes from this. So Too Much Mouth, which I believe her name is Shanine, goes into this, and then Neon MUA comes into this also. So there's a lot of tweets I'm about to read to you. I'm very sorry, it's gonna be long, but I think it just kind of shows Jen's lack of comprehension. And not even that, but just her refusal to listen. So then Shanine comes in and says, you have a right to hurt. The problem generally always starts when people who don't experience racism try to compare it to their hurt when there is no comparison and they could have just addressed their hurt and left racism out of it together. And like, that is it. And then Jen can't just she can't accept anything as being like, you know what, you're right. No, she has to have her own say. She's got to speak over people. It's the amputated arm and the broken finger. The comparison is in the pain, not the severity. Is there any way for me to know what it's like to have an amputated arm? Absolutely not, but I know there is pain there. I know that my broken finger also feels pain. We can't expect someone with no opportunity to gain this perspective to have that perspective. We can only express what we know. Most people like me can only parrot back what we've learned, but we will never know, so how can we show empathy? Through any comparison we can. It comes off as crude. There's another part of the tweet that I'm missing, but like, listen, I was trying to grab as many screenshots as possible. So Shanine said, not when that comparison is liking the pain to having the same depth. We can go our whole lives without ever breaking an arm. We know physically a broken arm hurts more than jamming your finger in a door. And if people are incapable of showing empathy through also having gone through pain without putting their pain on the same level, if not more, than the pain of another, when there is literally no comparison or instance where the other can feel both pains. Okay, Shanine, I love you, but this run-on sentence. That the other person can't, it may be best to not say anything at all, because I don't think anyone would feel a sense of solidarity to someone saying, my paper cut hurts just as much as your stab wound. And that is a great analogy. And then Jen said, absolutely, we're on the same page. But my point is, it isn't a competition of whose pain hurts worse. But like, you did make it a competition. And so did Kevin, and you had to, and like, why are you, like, also, why are you still talking, Jen? Why are you still engaging in this instead of just saying, you know what, you're right, I'm wrong, the end? They can't be compared in severity at all, but the base emotion is pain, and if it's all someone has experienced as a paper cut, that's all they have. It takes listening and conversations and an open mind to gain any kind of perspective of something you will never experience. That's why we believe we need to take competition out of it and just listen, care about each other as human beings, and support each other in our unique experiences. The issue when you take competition out of it in regards to putting racism on the same level as ageism is it undermines the severity of racism. It lets white people say like, oh, racism isn't that bad because I also experience ageism, and then it just kind of undermines that and then puts it on a lesser level, and then people stop caring about it or act like it's not that big of a deal when it is. And then Shane says, anyone who experiences racism knows it's not a competition, and that's literally the point they're making when they tell people who don't experience it to stop equating their situations to racism. Stop equating boomer to the N-word, stop equating fame to slavery. Jen said, they're not equal, not in the slightest. She still won't stop. Shanine replied, so then people should be mindful of that and stop the comparisons and stop interjecting or over speaking with their pain when the topic at hand is race, thinking that it's okay because they felt pain too. Jen said, it's not okay to speak over someone's pain. It's not okay to minimize someone's pain. It's not okay to compare the depth of racism and ageism. It is okay to respect that we all have different experiences, listen, and support each other. And then Shanine said, it's not okay to minimize someone's pain. It is okay to inform someone that it's not okay to compare pain, and you are comparing, Jen. You keep saying it's not a competition comparison only to go on and compare / try to relate just because two people may feel pain, and that's the problem. Jen said, I'm not saying that though. I'm saying that sometimes comparison is the only tool people have. I'm saying that comparison is a default mechanism, and that often ends in failure because they cannot be compared. And Shanine says, but several times since this conversation started, you've used words like equal and comparison, even if it's unintentional and comparisons are being made by default. What people are saying is it's wrong. And I think you can see the other's confusion when you say things like stop making things a competition, only to turn around and say things like comparisons are a default mechanism. So that comparison of, wait, I've hurt too, I felt pain too, so shouldn't we acknowledge my pain too? That makes it a competition. That's why people are angry. I want you to know that I still have 2 more screenshots for this conversation. Jen replies with, what I'm trying to say with the wait, I've hurt too is a default. It's something people use to try to relate. It's not a good thing to do. It's sometimes meant with good intentions, but it isn't the same at all. I'm trying to explain why it happens, not that it should happen. Like, do you think that Black people don't know why people do that? Why they compare their pain? It doesn't matter why you do it. What everyone is trying to tell you is that you shouldn't do it. And again, Jen, you're not just some regular bitch on the internet. You have a platform and people look up to you. And instead of trying to white-splain racism to Black people, you should be listening and then adjusting your actions. And then Shanine says, but you not saying why, because why is privilege. Being so privileged that you think you can compare your pain to pain that is much more severe. What would be more beneficial is explaining why people shouldn't while bringing up the real why. And then Jen says, totally agree. The original tweet was meant to be more general. It didn't become more specific until people started applying it to yesterday's conversation. When I tweeted it, I was thinking of yesterday's conversation, but I was thinking of lots of other situations too. Like, please don't act like you weren't subtweeting about yesterday's situation and the hate you got. She was trying to make people feel bad for her because Jen is the queen of playing the victim. And then Shanine said, given how close it was made, I can see what people thought it was about yesterday, and I think you can see why if it were, it'd be disappointing given yesterday's conversation was about downplaying racism and comparing to something else. Even if a little part of your original tweet was about yesterday's, it's disappointing that more emphasis is being put into trying to explain why people feel the need to do so than explain why it's harmful and why it shouldn't be done. Keep in mind that her original tweet says not everything's a competition. A person saying they have a problem doesn't negate your problem. So what she's saying is, I know racism's worse, but like, what about my pain? I know your pain is worse, but my pain. And like, everyone has the right to their pain, but the issue everyone is talking about is the fact that you're comparing it, and you don't seem to have gotten that message. So then she says, well, let me rephrase. I said, I completely see this point of view, but I think saying I completely respect this point of view is more accurate, as I'll never be able to completely see from your point of view on this topic. In short, I think you're right. And then Shanine said, I don't really think it's about seeing it from my point of view. Like, no, of course you're never going to see it from her point of view because you're white. And then she said, but more so understanding the impact of some of the things you're saying. I don't want to be right. I wanted you to see that while trying to prove your point that we hurt in different ways, which really no one disagrees with. You said some things in the last 36 hours that are detrimental to a demographic of your followers like me. I don't want to be right. I don't want an apology. I don't even want you to feel bad. I wanted you to realize it because from the way you've been answering some people, it doesn't seem like you do. And what Shanine's saying here is like, you know, I wanted to have a conversation with you so that you could learn and you could digest what I'm saying and realize why what you're doing is wrong. But instead, all she's done through this whole conversation is defend herself over and over and over again. She basically says, thanks for sharing that with me. A big problem with Twitter is that it's easy to get lost in threads, to miss parts of conversation, to make assumptions what a tweet means. I honestly think that's where a lot of things get misconstrued and the message gets twisted. Okay, so basically she said, you didn't understand me. You misunderstood me. When no one misunderstood you, Jen, I think you just don't realize the impact of your words. And so Shanine was done with that conversation, and then Neon MUA popped in and said, sometimes the best way to let people know you understand and hear them is to let them speak for themselves when the rest of the world isn't listening. And then Jen said, when have you known Shanine not to speak for herself? She's amazing in that way. I hear her and I listen to her, and I will take our conversations into my heart and be a better person for it. As she continues to speak for herself, I'll also share what she teaches me. And then he said, I wasn't talking about her directly. That's the overlying issue here. I have nothing but respect for you. So me saying this is from a place of respect. Watching this discussion over the past few days, the problem that everyone is noting is that while you are being open to listen to the concerns of others, your platform and privilege here doesn't. And her response is, oh my God, I can't do this anymore tonight. I want to talk to you, but I can't. I don't want you to hate me for something I didn't do. You're making connections that aren't real and are in direct contrast to what I'm saying. This man literally, this is the thing, Black people can't say shit to Jen without her having a panic attack and thinking you're attacking her. This man literally was like, I respect you so much, and like, this comes from a place of love, but like what you're doing is wrong. And she's like, oh my God, I can't make it stop. I can't stop. But like, he didn't say anything that mean. He just said, you're privileged and you need to recognize it, and what you're doing is wrong. And then she said, I care about both of you, but you've got everything wrong. I just can't spend the next hour going over all of the tweets showing you what I said and how I agree with you. I'm not mad. And the thing with Jen agreeing with them is that she keeps saying, you're right, but then, you're right, but also, you're right, but what about this? But like, that's not a you're right. That's you saying, well, yeah, like, I agree with you, but like, also, what about my point? Can you validate it? So Neon MUA replied with, I hope this anger and passion gives you an understanding of what we have been saying this whole time. That feeling of not being heard or understood is exactly why this topic has been going on for the past few days, Jen. And like facts, she is literally getting a taste of her own medicine and she can't handle it, but she thinks that they should be just taking a spoonful and smiling at her. She said, I'm not angry, I'm upset. I'm crying because I care about you and I feel like you and Shanine have this impression of me that's completely wrong and I hate it and I don't know how to fix it and I'm tired and I'm upset. I'm not angry at all, I'm just upset. And like, there's no reason to tell someone over Twitter, over a tweet, that you're crying unless you are looking for sympathy. Jen is always playing the victim when she made her bed and now she's lying in it. And he said, listening to people instead of becoming the victim would help. T. The moment you told me that you can't do this anymore instead of actually listening to my concerns changed the tone of this discussion. You can remove yourself from these discussions, but the reason why myself, Shanine, Jackie, and so many others are still discussing this with you is because we don't get the privilege to stop being Black. We can't just turn a blind eye to the comment Kevin and yourself have made, because this is our daily struggle. Racism has been institutionalized, and we speak so loudly about it because we are tired. What you and Kevin said about the comparing ageism and racism is wrong in all degrees. There's no need to prove that point otherwise. And he's completely correct. Jen's privilege is showing, and she doesn't realize, like, it's very clear that she doesn't realize why what she's doing is wrong. And instead of taking a step back and figuring that out, she just wants some Black person on the internet to tell her that she's not wrong, and they're not going to. So she said, I never once said ageism and racism were the same ever. I don't believe that, and I never have believed that. And he said, but I literally watched you make this comparison to a Black person. And so a Twitter user by the name of Thighs Dem Tick Like Pumpkin, which like iconic, replied to one of Jen's tweets and said, there's really no way for you to know. The way to know is to ask Black people like Jackie. My grandma is old and Black. I guarantee you she would not compare the ageism that she experienced to being taunted with no Blacks, no dogs, no Irish signs when she moved here. Which is like a very valid point. There are people who are old and Black, in case Jen forgot, and they would say every time that the racism they experienced has always been worse than the ageism. This is where Jen showed her whole ass. I did ask Jackie, and now you're yelling at me. The reason why people are afraid to ask questions is because of people who yell at them when they are just trying to gain a different perspective. I'm not perfect, but at least I'm not judging and yelling at people who are trying. So in this tweet, Jen 3 times said she's being yelled at, when this girl did not include exclamation points or foul language or anything that any normal person would be considered yelling. The only thing is that she's a Black woman. Shocking. Because Jen literally put capital letters, exclamation points in her tweets to Neon MUA, and I'm sure she didn't think she was yelling at him. And then Thick Thighs replied and said, Can we stop acting like intersectionality doesn't exist? There are people who experience both. For example, I experience ableism and racism. My ableism affects me day to day far more due to intersectionality. I can tell you that. Jackie Aina is right, but you're out here digging. And she put a gif of her digging a grave, which, like, iconic. And then Jen said not digging, just trying to learn at the risk of being attacked by people like you who just want to make people feel like shit for not being perfect. I said I was wrong for saying the same feeling. We are all humans with feelings. You feel pain, I feel pain. Which, like, again, you literally just said, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but, like, also my pain. Once again, undercutting what you're saying. And once again, you're saying this girl is attacking you when what she said was a very valid, simple point that was not yelling in any way, shape, or form. So Neon MUA went on to say, this is my issue. The same issue I said from the jump. You, as a white woman, should not try to explain racism or how it relates to ageism or anything else in any way to any black, brown, or other marginalized group. That is not your ministry. Therefore, you should not be defending anyone who tries to do the same thing. No matter the friendship, that is wrong. That's what we have been saying to you this entire time. Stop trying to explain or defend. You were wrong. He's not wrong. She's wrong. Then she said, I wasn't ... I didn't ... I've shown you the tweets. We are tweeting something that was a completely different conversation. You are tweeting something that was a completely different conversation. I've said so many times that I shouldn't have engaged in Kevin's tweet. I said that I shouldn't have used the word same. I did never defended Kevin. I did never defended Kevin. Saying that racism and ageism were the same. I didn't do that. I've shown you what happened. I didn't do that. And he said, Jen, I literally watched you talk over Jackie about this. There's a reason we keep saying this to you. Like, you don't understand. Like, you understand that we are hurt not just by your words, but by your actions as well. And then she said, I didn't overtalk Jackie. I talked with Jackie, which, like, not your perspective to have. If Jackie were upset with me, I'm sure she would tell me, I'm sorry I hurt you. I really am. And, like, here's the thing. Jackie might not tell you if you upset her because Jackie might just be fucking tired. It is exhausting for black people to continually have to sit on the internet and explain to white people why what they said is wrong or problematic or racist. There's a lot of emotional labor that goes into teaching white people why what they said is fucked up. And I'm sure Jackie just got to a point where she was done with the conversation. She was like, Jen's not listening, she's not learning. I have nothing else to give to this conversation, so I'm gonna step back. That doesn't mean that Jackie's not upset with you. It also doesn't mean that Jackie doesn't forever think that you're trash because of it. It just means that she didn't want to deal with it. And he goes on to say, actually, none of that is true. She doesn't owe you that, especially after the year she's had where every time she defends herself, she's deemed a loud, angry black woman. But now the point is lost. I truly wish you the best with the situation moving forward. And then she was like, I didn't say she owed it to me. I said she would tell me. We have talked privately many times. I'm sad after all of this, our conversation has ended like I didn't even try. Like I don't even care. Good night. I wouldn't have spent from 2 to 3:45 a.m. talking if it were what you make me out to be. And once again, she's like, look at what I've done. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning talking about racism. I'm obviously not racist. I obviously care. And like, it's still not about you, Jen. So that's kind of where that ended. And then later that day, Jen issues an apology. Which is kind of how she does things. I apologize to anyone who I disappointed or upset by my words over the weekend. I apologize to those who tried to talk to me and were not heard. I will no longer be speaking subjectively on topics related to race unless they are directly makeup related. Example, shade range. This goes for all platforms, including YouTube. Thank you to those who took the time out of their weekend to try to talk to me. I appreciate you. I hope everyone reading has a good evening. And here's the thing. Saying I'm just not going to talk about racism anymore is just like so much proof that Jen is not learning from this situation at all. Like the issue isn't you discussing racism and also just being like, well, if I can't talk about racism without you guys telling me I'm wrong, I'm just not gonna support the cause anymore. I'm just not gonna talk about racism anymore. Like it's not important. And it's like also your privilege is showing because the fact that you get to not talk about racism is a privilege because you're white and it doesn't impact you. And it's just like such a cop-out. It's just such victim behavior to be like, well, I'm just not going to talk about it anymore because I'm being attacked. But she wasn't attacked. She was trying to be educated, and it's just proof that she refused to learn. Because if she had learned from the situation, her apology would say, I'm so sorry for what I said. I spoke over black voices instead of listening to them, and I was just being defensive, and I was stupid. But nowhere here does she say she's gonna be a better person. She just says, well, I'm just not gonna talk about it anymore. And that becomes a pattern for Jen, as well as speaking over marginalized voices. So that was at the end of 2019. And then in 2020, I want to briefly talk about a live stream she did in June. which was a Black Voices live stream. She had other Black creators on, and I heard the live stream was great and there was a good conversation about racism. However, what I also heard was that the chat was wild. Apparently the chat was out of control. The mods were not controlling it properly. Yoga with Mo did a great video of this, so I will leave that down below because she has all the screenshots and stuff and I couldn't gather them. But basically what happened was the moderators were muting Black people for calling out racism and fetishization of Black people in the chat, while not, like, they were giving, the people who were doing the racism and the fetishization were getting warnings, but the Black people in chat who were calling out the fetishization and the racism were getting muted and silenced in chat, which is so fucked up. And either Mo or one of her friends sent an email to Jen talking about it and being like, you know, the way your moderators handled this was not okay. You know, Black people were being silenced in a chat about Black people. Like, it wasn't okay. You need to do better next time. And there was all these things. And first of all, Jen was like, could you provide screenshots and proof? But like, the chat is up on her channel with the live stream, so she could just go look at it herself. So it's kind of like you're once again making Black people do your work for you. And then she said that calling it out in the chat was distracting, and that's why those people were muted, because they were calling out racism and fetishization in the chat. And then she further goes on to say that she's just gonna not have live streams anymore with chats. Does that sound familiar to like where she was gonna talk about racism like 2 months before that? She said it's not fair to expect perfection from her mods. And like, no one is expecting perfection from the mods. They're expecting progress. And like, I would bet my left tit that her mods were all white people. I would bet it. Like, she had all these Black creators on, but she couldn't get some Black creators to help mod or to ask the Black creators if they had people that could help mod that were people of color. And so I just thought this was another interesting point to bring up, because it's just more proof of Jen playing the victim and being like, oh, well, I can't expect perfection from my mods, so I'm just gonna not do it anymore. Just no more live streams. So we're gonna have videos about racism and race-related issues, but like, Black people can't comment on it or can't have a conversation about it at the same time.
Hey guys, if you've reached the end of part 1, you are an absolute champion. So this video ended up being 1 hour and 14 minutes once I fully edited it. So I decided to split it into 2 parts, but I will be uploading them simultaneously. So part 1 is over now, but part 2 will be linked below and also linked in the eye above. Thanks so much for watching. I would love to know what you guys think down below about this situation. I know this is kind of more of the older tea, but I think it's still very important to remember for the part 2. I think it kind of sets up part 2 and everything that happened in 2020. So again, let me know what you guys think down below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.